This is the first video in a series of videos in which the goal is to make a poker bot that can beat an amateur level poker player. This might seem like too modest of a goal, especially if you're vaguely familiar with chess bots, which have been crushing humans since the 90s, but I think it's actually still going to be a bit of an uphill battle. And this is because poker is a much different game than chess. It's in a class of games called imperfect information games, which require different AI techniques. And it actually wasn't until 2017 that AI researchers were able to create a bot that could beat top-level humans. One of the things I think is really important for people unfamiliar with the game of poker to understand is just how much luck is involved in the game and how long it takes for the luck to balance out. And the answer is about 100,000 hands before you can say with statistical significance that your strategy is winning. And we know this because for about 15 years now, people have been playing online and saving their results in tracking software. And people are consistent in finding a standard deviation of about 100 big blinds per 100 hands. So this would be the standard deviation that's kind of inherent to the game. And this has also been confirmed by the AI researchers that play bots against each other after they've created them. And over large samples of hands, we're talking like millions of hands, players usually find that the best win rates that they can sustain over those large samples is somewhere between 0 and 10 big blinds per 100 hands. And that's after taking into account the rake, which is essentially the fee that the casino charges to play, which is about 5 big blinds per 100 hands. And so knowing that the edges in this game are so small, the question is, how exactly would we even know that we had a winning poker bot once we trained one? And I think the answer to this is really not so simple. And it was actually also a significant problem for the AI researchers when they were creating their bots, because running their bot on even a single hand was computationally expensive. So having to run through so many hands to get a significant sample was even worse. Having these computational limits seems to be a theme in AI. Last summer I read this book, Deep Learning and the Game of Go, and it's a cool book that walks you through creating really primitive bots all the way up to AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero. But I was kind of annoyed because about halfway through the book, in the chapter where it walks you through creating a Go bot that should be able to beat strong amateurs, the authors let you know that if you were to actually train the bot, it would cost thousands of dollars. And from reading some of the AI poker papers, even though they use entirely different algorithms, the training process still seems to be prohibitively computationally expensive. So if you do a search for poker bots on GitHub, you'll find that most aren't actually solving No Limit Hold'em or any of the games that are actually played by humans in casinos and online. You'll find that what they actually solve are called toy games. These are much smaller and simpler games that were designed to have some of the features of full poker games like shared community cards with multiple rounds of betting, but they use fewer cards and limited bet sizes to keep the game tree smaller. These are useful for confirming if your algorithms are working and for putting hard numbers on things like win rates and exploitability. And they're actually useful for actual poker players because they can extract some wisdom from the strategies that the AI develops, and you can basically map that from the smaller game onto the full game of poker. But from the point of view of creating a bot for the full game, it's not quite so useful. When you look into research papers where they're doing AI on a full poker game, you'll find that they often measure the amount of computation required in core years as opposed to core hours. And this is the amount of computation a typical CPU can do in a full year. And you'll also find that they funded all this training with like $100,000 grants that they received. So for example, the Carnegie Mellon bot that beat humans in 2017 ran on a literal supercomputer named Bridges, and it required some kind of massive tree. I think it was like 50 terabytes, and all of that was actually kept in RAM. So this is something that we're just not going to be able to do. And if you look at Deepstack, which is a slightly weaker bot, they say it doesn't need any special hardware to run, but it still took 175 core years of training, which I did some back-of-the-napkin math on a while ago, and it's been a while, but I think I remember that would have cost like $75,000 on AWS. So it's clear that we can't simply read these research papers and implement their ideas to create a working bot, although I think even that would be a tall order. With these papers, there's almost this weird thing. It seems like they're trying to get academic credit for the ideas without like giving away any of the implementation details. And I'm sure that's just the nature of academic articles, but it really does seem that way. And at the time, the authors of these papers were kind of in a race to create the first poker bot that would beat humans, so it kind of makes sense. And the papers are just hard to read. I mean, sometimes they'll introduce some new idea, and then they'll like later on say that they only used it on the river and turn, but not the flop, and vice versa. And it's just really hard to gather what the actual implementation would be for any of these bots. So we're going to have to get creative to make a bot without spending $1 jillion. And I thought now would be a good time to do an overview of the AI research, just in case any of you are not familiar with it, because there are some things we're going to have to know. And so one of the big ones is the fact that imperfect information games are different than perfect information games like chess. So in imperfect information games, state is not clearly defined. So basically, instead of having a single state, you have a distribution of states. And the result of this is that you have to solve the entire game tree together. You can't just look at a single node in isolation the way you can with chess, where after each move, it's almost like solving an entirely new game. In imperfect information games, the expected value of any action isn't just a function of the probability that you take that action, it's also a function of the probability that you reach that game node to begin with. And that sounds complicated, but I think it's something that you understand intuitively if you play a game like this, like with poker. In poker, there's this notion of slow playing, where you purposely underrepresent the value of your hand, knowing that if your opponent thinks you have a weak hand, then the value of your strong hand actually goes up. And so it's easy to reason about this kind of thing intuitively, but it really throws a wrench into the traditional AI methods, which is why we need to use new things like counterfactual regret minimization. And counterfactual regret minimization is basically the king of the imperfect information game algorithms. It's what we use to find the Nash equilibrium strategy, and there's a bunch of variations that have some different properties, and they're basically just optimizations that help it converge faster because it's a really slow algorithm. It has to walk the entire game tree multiple times before it starts converging to anything. And as an algorithm, I think it's pretty natural for a programmer to implement and understand. It just walks the entire game tree and it bubbles up the payouts from the leave nodes. And then from the internal nodes, we use those bubbled up payouts to adjust the strategy profile within each node. So basically you choose which child to go to with some probability, and you adjust those probabilities as you get input basically from the leave nodes as it bubbles up. And poker players already use software that makes use of this algorithm. The most popular is called PioSolver, and basically with PioSolver you use an abstraction over the bet sizes where you limit which bet sizes are allowed to be used. And it doesn't do any hand bucketing, so it tells you what to do with actual individual hands. But the one thing with it is it's just kind of slow to use, especially if you want to solve the actual full game. Some people, they have to leave it running overnight and things like that, so it's not especially useful from the point of view of making a bot. And the thing with abstractions in general is that when you create an abstraction of the game, so for example, if instead of allowing all the bet sizes, you only allow increments of 10, or if you do some type of clever grouping of the hands in an attempt to shrink the game tree down to a size that you could solve with CFR, what you'll find is that the strategy that CFR converges to doesn't actually do that well when you play it in a real game. And I think this isn't intuitive at all. It seems like poker's a simple enough game that you could come up with a smart bucketing strategy. Like maybe you would treat pocket fours and pocket fives like the same hand, but it turns out that this just doesn't actually work so well in practice. And I think it's kind of like making the same mistake as looking at an 8x8 chessboard and thinking there's only so many squares and so many pieces, like how hard could this be? But it's actually not so. And one of the authors of the Deepstack bot created this slide in one of the talks that he gave, and it basically just shows why it doesn't work so well. And this is an extreme case where he's shrinking it down to only 8 squares, but if you can even imagine on an 8x8 chessboard, if you were to just remove one of the squares and then solve the game with that would create so many complications, because basically the bot just would be completely lost on a huge set of hands. And that's basically the same thing that happens in poker, except instead of with squares and pieces, one of the key things in poker is blockers, which means that the cards that you hold have some interaction on what possible hands the opponent can have. And so when you do any type of bucketing strategy, you lose the ability to do that. And so basically, because the edges in poker are so small, when you don't have the ability to use blockers, you basically are just not going to win. But making abstractions isn't a total waste of time, because what they find is that even though the strategies that you come up with when you solve an abstracted game aren't very good, the expected value in any single node is actually pretty good. And you can make use of those when you're doing what they call subgame solving, which is basically in real time when you're playing the game, you use the abstracted solution. They call that sometimes the blueprint strategy, and they make use of that in a real-time algorithm. And I think the most important one and the best one that we could possibly make use of on a smaller bot is called the depth-limited solving for imperfect information games. This is the technique, and basically it relies on the fact that you don't have to solve the game all the way down to the leaf nodes like you do with CFR. You can actually just go down to some depth limit, and instead of using the actual payouts from the game at the leaf nodes, you just use the values that you found from solving the abstraction. And so I think when it comes to making a bot, the big question to ask is like, how big does this blueprint strategy have to be in order to be useful when we do the depth limited solving? And so the plan is to start with implementing CFR on some toy games. That's basically just to confirm that we have CFR working correctly. And I think even if we never make it to the goal of having a working bot, I think there's a lot you can learn by looking at the solutions to toy games. And then next up, we're going to have to come up with some type of bucketing strategy for the abstracted game. And then we're going to have to figure out how to run CFR on the abstracted game, which isn't so easy, I don't think, either. And then ultimately, we're going to have to do the depth limited solving part, which I think is probably going to be the hardest of all of them, because there's quite a bit of code and it has to run reasonably fast. And there's just a lot of questions about it, especially because the paper is kind of hard to understand for me. And then I think once we have all that done, if all goes well, for evaluation it would make sense to just play against it. And I think it would also maybe be a good idea to compare just on a couple specific hands how it does with Pio Solver. And I know with Nash equilibrium, like in the poker game, it's actually more of like a continuum of possible solutions. So if the outputs don't match exactly, that's not exactly a bad sign, but if they do match exactly, that would be, I think, a good indication that the bot would actually be pretty good. And so that is the plan. I'm going to have to make a couple more videos. So if you like that, please like and subscribe. Thank you.